Thank you so much for everybody who's joined us, and I am really excited to bring five people to this discussion. Three Earth and Space Sciences alumni and two current students. So, my name, for those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Clint Baranow. I'm a professor of geology at Columbus State University, and all these students have had the fortune, or probably misfortune, of being in classes with me. And it's been my fortune to have them in class because I've enjoyed all five of them. And so our session today is on underrepresented groups in the earth and space sciences. And as I talked with each of these students when we first met, I said, I asked them, begged them in some cases, if they would please come and participate in this, because one of the things that I know each of them coming into this department, not a lot of people look like them. And that, I think, as we all know, there's a lot of underlying things going on that causes that. And I thought it was really important. I think all of us think it's really important to allow students from underrepresented groups to share their stories, especially for people who are considering going to the sciences or in the sciences now. So you guys don't want to hear from me. I don't even want to hear from me. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panelists. So I just go around real quick. Dr. Venable is currently working at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as the ORISE postdoctoral research scientist. Randi Butler is a soil conservationist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture National Resources Conservation Service. John Hood is a PhD candidate at Vanderbilt University in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. And all three of these students are ESS alumni and have been here in the Department of Earth and Space Sciences and graduated here with bachelor's degrees, and then went on and got master's and PhDs and are working out in the real world. And then we have two current students in our MS Natural Sciences program, Jasmine Truitt and Torres. And so both of them are currently working with me on projects, and we want to get their insights into their experiences also. So the way that this will work is I'll actually come back to each individual panelist, and I'll introduce them, talk a little more about them, but then really let them talk about themselves. So each of them has an opportunity to kind of share with the group whatever it is they want to share. And then we'll do that for all five individuals. And then at the end of that, we'll open it up to questions. If any of our guests have questions for any of the panelists on any topic whatsoever, you can either ask that question through the chat function, or if I'm not mistaken, you can raise your hand, and when we get to the end in the Q&A period, then I'll give you an opportunity to ask that question in person. And I know all five of our panelists will be more than happy to answer any question. So without further ado, let me introduce our first panelist and speaker. That is Dr. Venable. As I said, she is the ORISE she's an ORISE postdoctoral research scientist at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Dr. Venable did her BS in geology here at Columbus State University, graduated in 2008. She then joined us in the Masters of Environmental Science program and graduated from that program in 2011. And then she went on to Howard University, where she got a PhD in atmospheric science that helped her in her to get into some of her current positions. She's held internships with the National Weather Service, Weather Channel, and the NOAA Storm Prediction Center. She was actually an instructor here at Columbus State University and at Columbus Technical College before she got into her current position. And again, she's currently employed with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So with that in mind, Dr. Venable, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baranow. So a little bit more background about me, making sure I don't have an echo. Currently, right now, I am a research scientist at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in the Center for Environmental Measurement and Modeling. where we are looking at how land use impact hydrology. And so with that, I have two different specific projects that I'm working on, which encompasses hydrologic interactions with land use. One, I'm working with an eco-hydrologic model that's looking at wildland fires and how riparian buffer zones impact best management practices for drinking water. So in the advent of all the wildfires that are going on right now, I'm actually working on something to help deal with the mitigation factors for drinking water supply in those regions. Another project that I'm actually working on as well deals with sediment yields in river systems. So I'm developing a algorithm which will incorporate land use and non-point and point source pollution sources to actually show sediment loads and total suspended solids within river network systems in the United States. Um, for most of all of my academic matriculation, I was looking for um, something new, something that was not present from anything that I've ever seen before. And in order for me to get where I have been at, I have been looking for a lot of fellowship funding opportunities and scholarships, which afforded me these opportunities to work at these different institutions. Currently, right now, as a software developer, I'm utilizing all of the skill sets that I've learned in my academic matriculation from CSU, from Howard, which all deals with environment and hydrology. So I would say that if I had any advice to give anybody, being the first is tough. A lot of times there are not people that look like you in advent of what you're trying to do. However, there are avenues, there is funding, there are great professors and mentors that help and assist and guide along the way, and to be actively engaged in research, because that's actually what has been um, my saving grace in all of my matriculation throughout my college years. So that's all I got.
Well, thank you, Dr. Venable, very much for sharing that. And so I want to go ahead and introduce our next panelist. So our next panelist is Randi Butler. Randi is a soil conservationist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, currently employed in the National Resources Conservation Service section. And let me move that out of the way. And so let's see. So I'm trying to find my notes here. She got her BS in geology in 2012 from the Department of Earth and Space Sciences here at Columbus State University. She then went on and got a master's in forestry and natural resources from the University of Georgia. And then since graduating from the University of Georgia, she worked with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, then the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And as I said, she's currently employed with the USDA National Resources Conservation Service. And so with that in mind, I will turn this over to Randi.
Alrighty, hi everyone. Can y'all hear me correct? Okay, awesome. Okay, like Clint said, I am Randi. Like he said, graduated back in 2012 with my bachelor's in geology, and then went on to get my master's in natural resources at UGA. Yeah, I guess what I've been doing since then, kind of similar to KK, I've experienced internships, and that's how I got into my career field. I initially started off with the agency I'm with, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, as a soil conservationist trainee. I did that all of my master's degree. And then as soon as I was about to graduate, I got accepted to intern with the Environmental Protection Agency in their water protection division. So I did that right during my last semester of grad school. And one of the stipulations at that time was once I graduate, I got employed. So I did get hired full time, but they changed my, I guess, position from where I was interning to another team. And although my background is in geology initially, I am one of those people who wanted the happy medium. Initially, I was like, hey, I wanted to do atmospheric science really bad. And I actually did take some classes for that, and the maths were just getting up there and the physics was getting up there. And I wanted my happy medium, a little bit of earth and a little bit of atmosphere. So there came water, and that's how I got into hydrology. And since then, I've been plugging, chugging, and going strong in that route. After I left the EPA, I went to the Army Corps of Engineers and worked as a hydrologist, where I basically found water resources over the whole world, not United States, but like different countries, Korea, Africa, Iraq, anywhere military presence is, I was helping them find water sources, giving them information on like groundwater types, or if this is a pond, a stream, a perennial stream, ephemeral, whichever you need, we gave that information. So I did that for 2.5 years. And unfortunately, my team got shut down. But I got back with my initial agency, which is the NRCS. And now what I do as a soil conservationist is I work in Elbert County, Georgia. I go out and help local landowners, stakeholders, even tribes, when that comes across, and entities. And I help them figure out ways to better improve the natural resources that are on the properties they occupy or they control. And by doing that, we sometimes give them technical assistance, which is just our advice from our perspective, or we help them financially a little bit, where it's an incentive for them to do something to better environment. They get a little money to help do it. And we just monitor and regulate that throughout the whole process. I go into the field a good bit, not since COVID, well, kind of sort of since COVID. I've still been going out a lot, and a little bit not so much, just for social distancing. But I guess that's kind of where my career took me. There's a lot more advice I could give, but I feel like I'm rambling and not staying on topic. But it is a very interesting place to be, when, especially seeing myself as one of the few people that look like me. But it is inspiring to other people I have to work with, because they feel like, oh wow, if you can do that, I can do it. Or they have a familiar or different type of person that they can reach out to that doesn't meet that same stereotypical standard. Not to say anything bad about anybody, but some people have their thought processes. So I enjoy my job. I enjoy being in the field. I enjoy being outside and just helping. So that's my spill on me.
Well, thank you, Randy. We appreciate that. By the way, for all our guests who have recently joined, everyone is muted on entry, just so we don't have any disruptions in the meeting. If you do have questions for any of our panelists at any point in time, you can use the chat function, and also you can use the raise your hand function. And once everybody's had an opportunity to talk, then we'll take questions from all 5 of our panelists. All right. Well, let me introduce our next panelist. So our next panelist is Jasmine Truitt. And so let's see. So Jasmine did her BS in Environmental Geosciences at Valdosta State University. And then she joined us here at Columbus State University in the Department of Earth and Space Sciences a few years ago. And she's currently completing a graduate degree in the MS Natural Sciences program in the Geosciences track. And her thesis project is geological analysis of a 100 million year old ancient soil sitting right on the fall line here in Georgia. And so she's currently working on her thesis as we speak, and she's also working full time with doing some environmental compliance down on Fort Benning. And so I'm going to give her the opportunity to talk about all those things as she tells us a little bit about herself and her personal story. So Jasmine.
Wow, thanks, Dr. Barrett. So I guess just to give a little short story into how I got where I am today. When I was in high school, I used to, from like the time I entered high school up until halfway through my 12th grade year, I thought I wanted to major in chemistry and become a pharmacist. And then I took AP Chem and I changed my mind. And I had to ask myself, where do I want to go and what do I want to do? And well, throughout high school, I was in a math and science program with Fort Valley State University called the Cooperative Developmental Energy Program. And that program, the goal of the program was to alleviate the underrepresentation of minorities and females in the energy industry. So through that program, I was exposed to geology. And at the time, I only knew of geology from an oil and petroleum perspective, but I remember they told us geology is a field that is in desperate need of women and minorities. So that is a good field to go into if you fit that description. So I decided to go that route, and through my undergraduate experience and then through my graduate school experience, I've learned the different paths that geology and earth science in general you can go. And so I currently work at Fort Benning as, well, my title is an environmental compliance professional, but I'm a part of the Clean Water Act team. So we do things from facility inspections to mapping the storm drainage features to spill response. And one thing that I get to do is I'm a part of, well, I get to lead our educational outreach and our public outreach. And that's something that I genuinely, that's my favorite part of my job. And I genuinely like that the most because I'm a big believer in that representation is important. And so the fact that we get the chance to go out to the schools on Fort Benning and even sometimes the community of Columbus, and I feel like a lot of times just when children get to see someone that looks like them do a job that they never knew was possible, it gives them like, hey, I can do this too. So being able to do public outreach with earth science has kind of, I guess, helped me figure out what I want to do next. So that's pretty much my story. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jasmine, very much. So let's see. So we will go on to our fourth panelist. And so let me introduce Ms. Coral Torres. So Coral did her bachelor's degree in biology, 2016, here at Columbus State University. And then she made the mistake of coming on a field course with me and apparently got interested in geosciences. And so we were lucky enough to get her, as we were Jasmine, into the MS Natural Sciences program. And so Coral is currently working on a thesis that's closely related to what Jasmine's doing, but she's looking at potential 100-million-year-old drainage systems that run across the fault line. And so I'm gonna turn the session over to Coral. Coral?
Hi, so again, I'm Coral. I'm originally from Puerto Rico and I moved to the States around 2007, I think, maybe 2006, cannot remember. But like Dr. Barano said, I got my bachelor's in biology, and my sister at the time, she was taking a geology class at CSU with Dr. Barano. And back then when I was doing biology, I had to take another science with a lab. But I didn't feel like taking another biology class. I wanted to do either like astronomy or geology. So my sister was like, yeah, Dr. Barano's class is pretty cool. And she told me how there was a Maymaster trip, which was like a 2-week camping trip. I was just like, well, might as well. Why not? I get a supposedly fun field trip out of it. And I also get to get some credits in a couple of weeks. So went on that trip. I had a pretty good time. And I don't know, I was put under some spell that somehow geology was fun. Um, and then I decided to go again the year afterwards. And I was just like, yeah, I guess this is still pretty cool. So I decided to go along, and I was just like, well, I've already taken a couple of geology classes. I feel like I've already gotten what I wanted to get out of biology. So I was just like, let's try another field, being geology. So that's how I decided to get my master's in geology. I think that's it for now.
All right, well, thank you, Coral. And so again, I know we're getting some questions here. So again, we'll share those questions with our panelists at the end. And so we'll go on to our last and fifth panelist, and that is John Hood. So John is currently a PhD candidate in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at Vanderbilt University. He did his bachelor's here at Columbus State University in the Department of Earth and Space Sciences, graduating in 2015. He then went on to Fisk University and got a master's degree in astronomy in 2018. I'll just note, while John was here, he also did the robotics certificate, which actually played a pretty important role in the research and the work he's doing right now. And I will simply add one last thing that I hope John will share with us, but he recently returned from the South Pole. He's one of the few scientists and one of two ESS graduates who've actually gone to work in Antarctica. But John actually got to go work to put together a telescope at the South Pole that I know he's going to share. I know that there will probably be some questions on. So without further ado, I'll give you John Hood.
Thank you for the introduction. I guess I'll start like late high school or early college for myself as well. Like coming up, I was kind of like I always told that I wasn't really good at like math or science or anything. So that kind of played a big role into how I initially started school. Like I had an art scholarship to go to school in Florida, but my father decided that becoming an artist was a horrible idea because I wouldn't ever make any money. So I decided to take up engineering instead. And I started in the pre-engineering program at CSU and took an astronomy course with Dr. Cruzen. And I remember he approached me one day after class and was like, you kind of have a knack for this astronomy stuff. Have you ever considered taking astrophysics? And I laughed, like I audibly laughed at him. It was kind of weird at the time because I didn't need to. I guess I laugh when I'm nervous or something. But he was just like, no, seriously, you should try it. It's like, take a couple of the classes. If you don't like it, like I'll help you change your major back. And yeah, took a couple classes, and now here I am now in like my third year of my PhD, like a couple years out from graduating now. Yeah, it was definitely like a weird route that I took, but the courses and like the people that I met in like the department at CSU, I feel like I'm one of the oddballs that kind of left geology. I still miss it. It's still fun. I like the trips, but I decided that I like space more than Earth itself. So I took a different route. But yeah, I left CSU and I went to the Fisk Vanderbilt Bridge program in Nashville, finished my master's, and now I'm working on my PhD with the South Pole Telescope group here in Chicago at the University of Chicago. And I'm also working alongside like the group of scientists at Argonne, where I'm helping to build the next generation detectors that are actually going to go on the newer telescopes that are going to be deployed at locations like the South Pole, Atacama Desert, and Greenland, I believe, is another possible location that they're looking at building one of these telescopes in the near-ish far future, relatively speaking, within like the next 10 to 15 years or so. So yeah, that's where I am now. And I guess I could share another thing that I just shared with Dr. Barano about looking for opportunities. Never stop looking. When you get to graduate school and even undergrad, a lot of opportunities are going to be very competitive, like really tough. And one of the most difficult things is like actually having somebody to tell you about them. If you have to search for them on your own, it can be very difficult, but don't let that stop you and keep looking, because that was my philosophy after I entered graduate school, and I actually just won a DOE fellowship. That it's my first time ever getting one like that, so I'm like super excited about that. So
Thanks, John. And yeah, if y'all didn't catch that, John just was notified that he was awarded a fellowship from the Department of DOE Energy or
yeah,
DOE.
energy.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah, want to make sure which DOE it was. Yeah, from the Department of Energy. So and that's a really big deal. Um, so yes, thank you, John, very much. So we got a few questions in the chat already, and I'm going to ask one of those in a second, but I would encourage all of our guests to ask questions. If anybody wants to actually talk to the panelists, again, you all are automatically muted, but if you just send me a message, I'm more than happy to unmute you so you can talk to me in person. So let me ask our panelists our first question. And so it says, one aspect of disparity that I've come across doing outreach seems to be access to outdoor spaces, especially at a young age. I'd like to get the panelists' thoughts on that. Do you feel like there is value in geoscience programs increasing outreach efforts to encourage better access to outdoor spaces? So I will leave it up to any of our or all of our 5 panelists to comment on that.
Well, I've done a lot of educational outreach as a instructor and in graduate school, and most of it has been in an indoor venue. But most of the things that are tangible to me that I actually care about come from exposure with being in the outside environment, in the elements, doing the field work. So I think that more needs to be done in an outside environment. And sorry if I sound like Oscar the Grouch.
Dr. Venable is fighting a cold. So any of our other panelists?
I would like to say something. I do think outdoor spaces need to be utilized heavily, but I also think in this case of it, especially with COVID going around, it makes people have to be more creative. Outdoor is always everywhere around us. So even though there are times that you want to go to like this huge, well-known outcrop, just go into the backyard or dig up. It's very easy to utilize the inside space like we all do, but sometimes in these situations where outdoor spaces are unavailable, like parks or things like that, you kind of have to be creative and think outside the box and just use what the backyard space you might have, or even the parking lot area you might have. Like, for example, if you want to teach people about impermeable surfaces, just go to the parking lot and talk about the type of gravel, concrete, whatever you have, and then tell them different ways that you can, or different things that are being created to make it more permeable or make recharge areas. So you just have to think outside the box. Although we are not given these spaces, you have to just really be creative. I do think it needs to be more for everyone to be able to access, especially age ranges. But in those situations where they're unavailable to us, creativity is the one thing that's going to make the huge difference in inspiring these little people to go into this field, or even older generations to just explore more and figure out what's going on.
Anyone else?
I just want to add, like, building onto that, I feel like a lot of younger people and older people alike, they think that all scientists do is sit cooped up in the lab all day. And that's not the case, especially for environmental science, like earth scientists. Like, they're rarely ever cooped up in a lab at all. They're always out running around, like up and down mountains, chasing Dr. Barano more than likely. And that's even like in astronomy, like you're out looking through telescopes. You go on adventures to like the craziest places to see interesting things in your field. And I feel like the vast majority of people don't know that. They just hear certain titles, geologist, astronomer, chemist, and they see scientists and they picture a stereotypical scientist in their head, and it's like, oh, you're a scientist, you wear a lab coat, you sit in a lab all day. Like that sounds boring to them. So getting that outdoor, like getting them out of that mindset is like a really big factor in getting more people interested.
I think it's ironic that people see a physical science, but they don't realize it's not stationary. It's very physical. Yeah.
I'm curious actually to get from all 5 panelists to follow up on that question. In y'all's memory, what was that kind of outdoor event that, you know, the first one you remember that kind of maybe led you to where you're at? What was there a formative, you know, outdoor space that really led you towards Earth Environmental Space Sciences?
I can answer that. For me, it was CDEP, that program I was in with Fort Valley, because that was the first time where we actually took a field trip. Because, like, I would say, growing up in Georgia, most people, you take a field trip at some point to Stone Mountain, but they kind of just are like, here's Stone Mountain, you can walk up Stone Mountain, ride the ski lift back down, and that's it. But like, we got the chance to, okay, we took a trip to Stone Mountain, but they told us how Stone Mountain got here. Like, we were able to take trips to the Grand Canyon, to the Hoover Dam, to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, University of Texas, Austin, and like we took trips to Pennsylvania. So that opportunity to be able to, I guess, just see what is beyond Georgia, even though there's a lot of geology in Georgia, just being able to see what is out there, for me, kind of helped steer me in that direction.
I have a comment. Like she said, everybody did go to Stone Mountain. I had the fortunate experience as a child to go to Fernbank and Sidetrack, which unfortunately no longer exists, and I really wish they would bring it back, but I know that's never going to happen. But that was one of the things that kind of led me into the direction that I knew I was probably going to do something science. And funny thing is, I went to Columbus State initially for music performance and then switched over to geology. I think when I got into the geology program, and this is not a snub at you, Clint, I'm sorry. Dr. Keller had a water management resources class. It was water management class. And we went on a trip to Lake Eufaula or Eufaula, Alabama, and also to Wekiwa or Wekiwa Springs in Florida. And we did a lot of water sampling. And I think that was when I kind of got the idea, like I already liked weather. I was headstrong into weather at that point, but that is kind of when the light bulb kind of clicked, like I think you really want to do water, but you're really content with weather right now. But this seems like something you like doing. And we camped, and also there was like a hurricane that happened while we were there, which was an experience in itself. But that was, I guess in my collegiate life, that was one of the field trips or courses that actually kind of like, hey, you actually do like being outside in the rain and with water everywhere. This might be your thing. So that's what my experience.
I'll say, like I mentioned earlier, one of my May semester trip, and I don't know, no offense, Dr. Barno, but maybe if I took like your regular in the classroom class, maybe I wouldn't be interested enough to take the jump into the geology masters, but definitely being outdoors and being able to apply those concepts that you learn in class and actually seeing how you may at one point in the future be able to use them. I guess it gives you that idea of actually applying it to the real world versus when am I ever gonna have to use this and whatnot. And for me specifically, I think it was we were in Colorado at Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and one of the students was giving a presentation of basically all this geologic history. I was just like, oh, this is really neat. I guess I will suffer along with all these other people from now on.
Well, I guess
Go ahead.
I'll go next. My first trip that resonated with me the most was in the water resource management course as well, with Dr. Keller, because I was able to see hydrodynamics in real time with this nutrient loading. And I was able to see the St. John's Water District management where they were doing everything with water. But then I got to do a sidebar on that when I was able to do an independent research project with Dr. Barano, where I was able to get a USGS um, elevation, DEM elevation point put in at CSU, and was actually able to do flow and discharge sampling on my own. And the last one that resignated, which was a two-part resignation, I was able to go to Ethiopia in a, I want to say it was a Maymester course as well. And it was for atmospheric chemistry, but in essence of that, I found out the importance of water amongst the world. And so that's how I just stuck with everything water from here on out, even in atmospheric science.
Anybody else want to
Um,
add anything to that?
yeah, so I guess I can say like the outdoor moment that really solidified that I wanted to become an astronomer. And then there was like another one that solidified when I wanted to continue being an astronomer. The former is when I was a kid. Like my family is from like out in the middle of nowhere in like northern Alabama. And we used to drive out there every summer. And for some reason, my dad liked to drive at night. Driving through the backwoods of Alabama at night is never a good idea, but I remember like looking out the window and seeing like these weird clouds all the time. And I thought that it was like the coolest thing in the world. And later I found out that those were actually like stars. And it was like I was seeing like a band of the Milky Way after like reading a bunch of books about stars. And so I was like, that's what I saw. I want to know more about that. And that wasn't really solidified until I went to Pole and actually going to a remote location to see a telescope that's actually used to do like legit like astronomical research. That's when it was like, okay, yeah, like this is definitely where I want to be.
Let's thank y'all all for sharing that. So, um, I've got a question for you guys, and it's this: if you, and I always like to ask this of lots of students, but I especially want to ask you guys. That is, if you could go back and talk to yourself, right, your younger undergraduate self, when you were first considering majoring in earth and space sciences, geology, astrophysics, environmental science, those types of things, and realizing, right, knowing that there weren't many students in that program that looked like you, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you have for the younger John and the younger KK, and the younger Randy, and the younger Coral, and younger Jasmine?
I'll go first. I guess the advice I would have to myself is probably the same advice I had to myself back then. One thing I've always told myself is just keep pushing. And that's one thing I would say, but I would probably, being older, going back to my younger self, also say that it's doable. It's not impossible. And I guess as a double minority woman in Black, it's not many people that were in my major that look like me. Actually, KK was really the only person that I was the same double minority as myself, and she was in grad school kind of around the time I met her. So I remember she had a conversation with me about how I could just keep pushing forward. I do remember her specifically telling me about graduate programs for people like us, or different opportunities that we could seek out. And I would really tell myself back then to really heavily take that advice and really actually utilize it. Because I think at that time I was just so involved with school and extracurriculars that I was like, yeah, this is just, I'm going to graduate and then I'm going to figure it out. But I would have told myself to actually really, really listen to those who are giving you that gem, that little jewel of knowledge that you can utilize, and just hold on to that and use it as you progress. Because it took me about a year after, well, not even a full year, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, about a year, I'm not gonna lie. About a year after I graduated from Columbus State to really, really like hanker down and say, okay, what did she tell you? Remember what she told you. Try to do this, try to do that, and just push, because it's not impossible. You can do it. And I'm still doing it. So that's something I would have told myself. I would tell myself.
I guess for me, I would tell I would try to tell myself earlier than I was told this, which is basically like keep pushing and work to change the norm. Because being the only one, I was like one of I think two for like my first year, like it like minorities in the astronomy department. But then after like the first year, the other guy left, and then it was kind of like a joke of like there was like a Highlander in the department where there could always only be one. But it was just like a way to kind of laugh off like awkward situations. But it was one of those things where it's like just keep working to change the norm, because eventually more will come. Like once they see, if they see somebody in the department, they'll be like, okay, at least there's another person like me there. And if that, I feel like if that person has to be me, then I'll take that hit. I'm doing it now here in Chicago. When I first got here, I was the only black student in the entire astronomy department. But ever since I've been here, this is going into my third year now. Now there are at least 4 or 5 of us. So it helps.
For me, I guess kind of to echo what was already said in terms of keep pushing yourself. But for me, it's also don't count yourself out and don't sell yourself short. A lot of times I would think that uh, when I was in undergrad and I was looking, especially when I was trying to look for grad school and looking at like either doing an internship after undergrad or trying to pursue grad school, and I would read just either requirements or what they're looking for. And I would think that, well, because I don't check off all these boxes, that I can't do this. And one thing that I've learned, especially working, I guess, with my first big girl job in a sense, is that there are a lot of unqualified people doing their job. So if they can do it and they don't check off all the boxes, I can do it too. So that's what I wish I would have told myself. And then I guess just keep pushing forward. And how when I first came to CSU, I was the only Black grad student in the ESS department. I was the only student for geology who didn't go to CSU. And currently at work, I'm the only Black person on my team. I'm the only woman on my team at work. And continue to keep moving forward, because at some point in time, I guess more people will start to come. Yeah.
I guess I would just say what I used to say to my classes all the time, is to be the change that you want to see. Um, be the solution and not the problem. Find something that you hold tangible to that you can actually make change towards. And just because there is a no doesn't mean there isn't a yes around the corner. And a lot of times those no's can also lead to wonderful yeses. I'm actually a firm believer of that right now. I ran into my dream job and I wasn't even looking for it. I was kind of told about it. And it encompassed everything that I had been doing and everything that I want to do. So it's out there. It takes time, and it's always not on the first try.
For me, when I was thinking about joining, not only would I have been the only Latina on, well, I don't know about the whole ESS department, but definitely the geology group, I would have been the only Latina there, and I think I still am. But also back then, there were only 2 other girls in the department, so that was also like a dang. I'm just out here with like a whole bunch of guys, 2 other girls. I feel like I can't be the only one that kind of got like imposter syndrome, but it's like, do I really belong here? Whatnot? Am I like, do I have it in me to do it? But like Jasmine said, sometimes there are people that you think they're not really that qualified to be doing what they're doing. And again, like, well, if they can do it, I can definitely do it. So I would just tell my younger self to like, just keep pushing, even if like moments of doubt. Again, all these people were able to do it. Why can't you do it?
Thanks to all 5 of you. So we've got a couple more questions, and so I'll ask this most recent one. So, so one of our guests have asked, what hurdles did you have early on in your BS degree? Can you think of anything, other than the obvious challenge, which is being a member of an underrepresented group in a department in a program, in a discipline that is dominated by white people and especially by men? That's a challenge into itself. But what other, in addition to that, what other major challenges do you have early on that you kind of overcame to get where you're at?
Yeah, so I, I can speak on that for me. Like I would say like 2 of the major challenges that I had were, the first is I really didn't have like family support because I was the first in my family to go to college. So they just assumed that, oh, you're just still in school. Yeah, whatever. It's just school. There's nothing to really worry about. Like, why are you stressing over it? And I ended up having to find like that family like support structure elsewhere, like primarily in the department, and like the people that I was like, luckily I found like a good group of people to like surround myself with, because they ended up playing that role of like really just being supportive. And the thing that made that even more difficult is because I was considered a non-traditional student, because I didn't go straight to college from high school. Like, I took a couple years off, because I was in tech school first, and that program shut down like after like a year later. So like I waited a year and then started school. And again, like I told you, I grew up being told I wasn't good at math or any of this stuff. So I come to CSU and they're making me take like these math courses, like the remedial math courses, and I'm just sitting there like, I'm not going to pass this. There's no way I'm going to make it through this. And that was the first time that I ever had a teacher challenge me, challenging myself on whether I was like good at math or not. And I remember his name was Randall Castleton. I took his course and I was like, first day of class, I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I'm not good at math, so I'm probably going to be in your office like every day asking you questions. And he was like, oh, you're not good? Okay, well, we'll see about that. And I was like, no, seriously, like, I suck at this. Like, you're going to be seeing me a lot. And he was like, okay, we'll see, we'll see. And just by him like challenging me in that sense, and then like actually working with me, like it was the first time that I ever started to gain any confidence in like my abilities to do like math in general. So that was like a challenge, and it was like a really big help at the same time. Like, that was like the challenge and the solution in the same kind of story.
Anybody else?
I'll go. So my biggest hurdles just to give a quick little background on how even I got in geology, like I said, I initially wanted to go to school for music, and that didn't work out. I was told by my mom, you better find something because we're not paying for school if you're just gonna sit here. And I knew I just liked natural resources. I like earth science. So Clint was the first, I had a geology class with him, and I think I had an environmental science class with Dr. Keller, and I remember asking them both, and Clint was like, yeah, we have a geology program. So not too long after I got in the geology program, I transferred out because I wanted to do atmospheric science, and I ended up coming right back. And Clint was there with open arms to welcome me back in and be the great advisor that he is. But Clint knows that my whole process through trying to graduate and eventually graduating with my bachelor's was a struggle. I struggled the whole way through, not just even early, just up until the end. I had a death in my family that happened literally the week before school started, and I struggled and pushed, and even to the point that I had to tell Clint, like, I don't know what's wrong, and I had to leave for a semester. That was one of the biggest hurdles, because after that, when I came back, it affected everything I did. Like, I didn't know if I could push through classes. I didn't know what to do. And then also, being a super active student, was involved in several different organizations, even a sorority, where when you're asked consistently by people who are your advisors, like, when you graduating, and you can't give them an answer, it's kind of frustrating. And then when they ask you, hey, well, what's your major? And you tell them geology, and they just look at you like you're crazy. That was a really eye-opening situation for me, because I realized I really didn't have anyone outside of my professors that I could go to for help. Now, I had couple of classmates within my major that really could help me, or I could converse with about stuff, but those were the biggest things that really affected my progress through this whole degree. And I passed through all of it, got through all of it. Clint was, even when I was at my worst, the one thing Clint used to always tell me was, I know you struggle, but the one thing that you always do is you always keep pushing. And that always used to make me happy. And then I even had Dr. Jackson, chemistry professor, literally take me to the side one day. And I had, to be honest, like, we're all human here. I failed some classes. I'm just going to be honest. And I've overcome that. But I did fail my chemistry class with him one semester, and I came back and took it another. And that summer, when I took it the second time, he pulled me aside and literally said, I don't understand how you failed. And I was like, I don't know. I was nonchalant, and I was pretty much in a space where I was just like, it is what it is. I'm just trying to graduate. I don't really care. And the one thing, this conversation to this day I remember, he's like, why are you putting yourself down? Why do you not understand your worth? Do you realize, like, I don't even remember if was Obama president? Yeah, Obama was president back then. He's like, we have like Obama in office, and you're sitting here thinking you can't do anything. Like, you can do more than this. Don't shut yourself down before you even get to the point where you can keep going. So I don't know, between him and Clint, that like lit a fire in me. Even when I was still doing bad, I just kept pushing. And those things are always in the back of my mind. So the hurdles I jump over, even to this day, there's hurdles that we all jump over every day. But our experience with geology is one of the things that I keep in my mind to even push through what I'm doing now. It just, you're fine. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it work. Don't give up on yourself. So yeah, those were the hurdles I had to deal with in my very beginnings of my career, getting to where I am now.
Anyone else?
I guess I can answer it too. For me, starting off in undergrad, one of the biggest hurdles was money. I remember it was Valdosta State. They would call you and leave a voicemail saying, you owe this much money, and if you don't pay it by this day and this time, we will drop all your classes. And this was when I was getting ready to go freshman year. And that stressed me out because I wasn't sure how we were going to pay for school, because it was, I got the Hope Scholarship, and I took out student loans, and then my mom took out well, she didn't take out student loans, but she took out loans. And through that, we were able to make it through my first year of college. And then I became a resident assistant. And when you're a resident assistant, you don't have to pay for housing. So that helped decrease a little bit how much I owed, but it was still, money was always an issue. But then the issue then became, I'm working and going to school. So then doing that balance of, that's something I struggle with to this day as a grad student, is trying to balance my time of working and doing that and also putting the time to school. But I think just kind of to echo what Randy said, is that there's always going to be some hurdles, but you find ways to keep moving forward.
Anybody else? If not, I got another question for you guys.
I just want to iterate that the staff support was critical to my bachelor matriculation. And I'm still in debt to Clint because he taught all those independent study courses for me, just because I was much further ahead than everybody else in the geology curriculum in order for me to graduate. So sometimes being the first is the toughest to get through because it's not designed yet.
Well, if there's nothing else to add on that one, I've got another question. This is from, again, one of our guests. It says, I know some of you have mentioned that you were introduced through instructors or internships, but did you find it difficult applying for your current positions? And did you think that you were underqualified to begin with? I haven't had the opportunity to do some of the extracurriculars along with working and taking care of family, and the job market is vast.
I can speak to that. Since I've had so many different jobs, it seems, Lord. Every job that I've had, well, I'll say the very first internship I had, I didn't think I was underqualified. I just honestly threw my name in a hat and forgot all about it and got hired. And to this day, I'm just like, okay, I didn't even know this was a job. I don't even remember applying. And I have that exact job now, and I know I'm qualified for it. But back then I didn't know. And all I knew back then, all I found out with that job back then was that I knew GIS. And that's exactly why I ended up getting hired. That's the one thing I had on my resume that nobody else had. And I would not have necessarily thought I was qualified or underqualified. I just didn't have the background. Now, when I get into like my career range, those are positions that I legitimately have been in and I didn't think I was qualified for. Like, or when I worked at the EPA, I came in as an intern, and that's the first time in my life as a person that's working paid full job, because I got paid like a salary aside from the internship I had previously. That's the first job that I actually had to be challenged, or someone challenged me to do something and I succeeded. And I was told by a supervisor that I was smarter than I thought I was. And that was a compliment, because I had never heard that. I thought I was just horrible, or I thought I wasn't smart enough like my counterparts because I was an intern. And like mentioned before, many of us have been in positions where there are people who are even higher than us that are heavily underqualified to be doing their jobs. But I had to realize, like, no, you're capable. And it gets kind of hard, especially still now when I'm applying for higher positions, promotions, I will most definitely count myself out before I throw myself in there. And then I'll just go through the application process, like just go ahead and apply, because if you say you're underqualified, you're shooting yourself down before you even get the chance to plead your case. So like my current position that I have right now, I actually came into this position overly confident, and I'm still very overly confident that I'm qualified for this job. I have had no problems. I know there are things I need to learn, but it's a part of the job. I have never felt inadequate with my job that I currently have. But any other job before that, because I've never worked it, I have always had that moment of just self-doubt, which is a working process for everybody. But for me, I always have to keep telling myself, no, you're good, you're fine, you do everything. And for you, if I know you said it's kind of hard for you to find any type of, I guess, internships or anything, I would say, and I saw this happen just because I interned with EPA. I had a friend that worked for the city of Atlanta in water. He had a full-time job and was doing his master's and had a wife. I don't understand how he managed to get an internship with us, but he did. But he also had a schedule of work at night. I would say your best thing to do if you are having issues doing anything is try to shadow somebody or get a mentor or something, so they can at least put you in the places or give you like locations or options for you to like explore, because there actually are a lot of currently on LinkedIn, as I see, a lot of jobs where they're looking for people to just do simple tasks, environmental science related. Like maybe you go over here for a day and get some survey numbers, or you go count mosquitoes. I know it doesn't sound fun, but at the same time, it's still within the realm of environmental science, geology, earth, space science, all of that. So you just kind of have to think outside the box or reach out to people that might know something so you can get that. You're never underqualified until they tell you you're underqualified. You are always qualified for something. Don't ever like shoot yourself down. I do it all the time, but I still try to make myself apply. The only time I don't apply is if I legitimately cannot answer a question on a resume and I know I don't know it. So I know I'm not qualified. But don't shoot yourself down before even putting your name in the hat. Let them get to that point, and even if they tell you're underqualified, bump it and keep on pushing forward. And if you know there's something you don't know, try to find it. It's free stuff everywhere. To this day, there's tons of information online, especially with COVID happening. People are being very technologically savvy, and I'm pretty sure you can find anything you need to find to get any information that you need to find. And I think all of us panelists are here to help if you need us. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm just saying, I think we're very helpful people.
Yeah, I just want to like add to that, like you're never underqualified until someone tells you statement really goes a long way, because it's like I feel like Randy really hit the nail on the head when she said like basically you're your toughest critic, so you're gonna think a certain way regardless. The only thing you can do is just like apply. And and you say you have to like balance like a family and everything to it. Like one of the guys that I look up to the most as far as going through school is, well, I'll start with the reason. Like the reason that I look up to this guy the most is because they going into graduate school, one of the things that I feel like secretly gets whispered to students is, oh, if you're married, graduate school is going to be so much tougher. You have a family, graduate school is going to be that much tougher, or college in general. I know a guy who just recently graduated with his PhD, had 4 kids, and had his fifth a month before he defended his thesis. He graduated from Vanderbilt and he was working remotely with a group out of Chicago and Italy, and got all of his work done in 5 years' time, and graduated like I think just like a couple months, like a semester later than he expected to. And I was just like, yo, if this dude can do it, if that is possible to graduate with like 5 kids, with a family, working remotely between like 2 different countries, like that balance can definitely be struck. And it's another one of those things where like if people see that you're willing to like, if people see that you can do stuff like that, and balance all of those things, that makes you more qualified, honestly, than somebody who doesn't have any of that stuff just doing their job. Because you already know how to strike a work-life balance, which is something that a lot of people are trying to figure out how to do properly now.
I wanted to piggyback off of a whole nother experience. I hate to call people out, but I'm a speaker of truth. So I wanted to be a meteorologist my whole life. I've known since I was 5 that's what I was supposed to do. So much, in fact, that I started off in meteorology in undergrad and I finished off with my PhD in atmospheric science. But still, to this day, I have not been able to get past the OPM standards to be a level 1 meteorologist. I can forecast better than all of them, but I still have not gotten past that. So, what did that tell me? This is not the agency for me. I was thinking too narrow minded. I needed to go somewhere else that was going to encompass all of my skill sets that weren't just weather. It was the combination of everything. Because now in my job that I have now, we are taking data from all different sources, including NASA, NOAA, EPA, et cetera, USGS. So just because somebody says no is not define the tail. And with my current job, I learned that if somebody really wants to invest in you, they will give you the on-the-job skill training necessary to execute what you're trying to do. So when I started my position, I was a one programming language software developer, and now I'm a 3 language programming software developer. So that can happen in 6 months as well. So yes, it's all about your time management and how you adequately utilize it and express what your needs are to better what your skill set for what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you all very much. Let me ask a question that I told you guys I was going to ask you. So I know y'all are all prepared for this, right? So my question is this: what can a department like ours, like Earth and Space Sciences, right, which is overwhelmingly populated with white faculty, white students, what can we do to make our programs more welcoming and supportive of students from underrepresented groups? Dr. Keller followed up with that with a question of his own, very, very similar. But what can we do better about recruiting and in turn mentoring students who are in underrepresented groups in Earth and Space Sciences?
Can I start?
Please, Ms. Truitt, go right ahead.
First, I would say, I know it's a process, but hiring more diverse faculty. For me personally, ever since I started college, I've never been taught by a Black woman. The last time I've ever been taught by a Black woman was in 11th grade. So it's kind of like, no matter how nice, faculty is, like, no matter, like, you are very nice, Dr. Barano, but you cannot tell me how to navigate this field as a Black woman because you are not a Black woman. And one thing I would have greatly appreciated even now is, like, someone that looks like me can tell me, like, this is what I had to go through to get to my position and all that. So I would say that. And for, I guess, current faculty, to me, even though I've never really had much of a negative experience at CSU, but I will say that just in general, be mindful that, like, we all as people, we all have our own sets of biases. And when you work in a field specifically in education, you have to be mindful of how you allow those biases, how you interact with other students. And so for me, I can recall a time being in class where, we give a presentation, and for me, when I give my presentation, I'm the only person who I get grilled the most in terms of questions. I get called out more, and I try to ask myself, did I not go in much detail? Or, well, it's like, no, because, you know, I spoke the allotted amount of time and some people spoke less? Was it because I'm a grad student? And it's like, well, no, because there's another person in here who's a grad student and they didn't get grilled as hard as me. But if the only reasoning that I can boil it down to is the fact that if I'm the only Black person in the classroom and you only challenge the only Black person in the classroom, then that's, you kind of forced to say this is what it probably is. So I would just say be mindful of how you interact with students as well.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll say something, and I guess I'll say it based off experience because I actually did go to HBCU for a very quick amount of time, and then came right back to, and then went to UGA. So coming from a smaller school to then to HBCU for some classes, and then going to a huge school, you do start seeing the differences in the way that people, in the way that departments handle it. One thing, like this whole panel that we have today, I think is very beneficial. I know you all have brown bag seminars. So I think if you could get more different people from different ways of life, that would be very encouraging. I'm not quite familiar how CSU does their, I guess they're like welcome day ceremonies and whatnot, but even just, I guess, highlighting, like how I know, Clint, you say you have a Facebook page. So highlight just how y'all are doing, highlighting your previous alumni, just showing them that, hey, it's not just a stereotype. We have people that are outside of this, maybe even providing demographic data when you all put out brochures, just to show that it's more people that have came through this program that are not like the stereotype will help. And then also, maybe some minority programs. And we all know in this world that minority just doesn't mean your race, it means your sexuality and so on and so forth. So like I will say, when I went to UGA, I had already heard about this organization when I had a brief semester at a HBCU. It was called Manners. So it's Minorities in Agricultural, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. That's a lot. But that was one of the things that kind of helped me even when I went to UGA, because I was only Black female there in that specific aspect of my program. And having that organization, not necessarily in that same department, but having that organization kind of just helped me navigate a little better. And it helped me reach out to other people, because I was actually trying to bring people into my program as well. So having different organizations that kind of cater to minority students or underrepresented groups, and giving these underrepresented students a platform to speak out about their experiences also helps bring in more diversity to your department. I don't recall having that while I was there. But again, I was also involved in like these many other organizations on campus that were diverse in themselves. So I didn't necessarily look for it within my my collegiate program. But for those of the students that don't want to be involved in other organizations outside of their major, those are something that I find are very beneficial to those, because I, like when I got to grad school, I wasn't as active, and those are the things that kind of kept me stable within my program. So I think those are things that y'all can look into, possibly, or even just or doing even what is it, a highlight of random people in history that's made a difference in these in this field. Just, and it doesn't have to just be like Black people or white people or Hispanic or Asian. It can just be super diverse to where you're representing everyone and giving like knowledge that there are people who are in this field. Not necessarily, they don't have to be here, but they're in the world in this field. So you give somebody to look up to.
So Randy, you just volunteered yourself to give a talk at the spring seminar.
I mean, as long as COVID isn't a problem, I don't mind.
No, I was going to harass you about that anyway. So actually, I was going to ask all of y'all to do that. So anybody else?
I have a suggestion just in a CSU context. I had the pleasure of being part of the QEP team at CSU, and the ROAR initiation for the new incoming freshmen is a great opportunity for them to meet the faculty and staff, but not in the same context as the classroom setting, meaning I get to really see you as a person and not this exterior of a doctor facade, right? And so in that, we're able to gain valuable relationships with students across the entire school, right? And not just, within our department. And I think that part of the diversity aspect comes from reaching out to other disciplines because, as you know, they're really tangible to the earth science anyway. They just don't know how tangible they are as a societal aspect that environmental science brings.
For me, kind of similar to what Jasmine said, for me, throughout my bachelor's and my master's, I've only had one Hispanic professor, and it was Dr. Ortega. So that was an extra cherry on top that she was actually a female as well. When I started in the geology track, she had actually just been hired on as the said professor. So back when I had gone on Maymester and everything else, she wasn't even like in the picture. So I was ready to go to like an all white people, mainly males. So when I saw Dr. Ortega was gonna be my set professor, I was just like, oh, that's actually pretty cool, you know. And she actually reached out to me pretty early on. She was definitely like, oh, you're the only girl in my set class, so you and I, we have to stick together, you know. We can't let these guys get all the spotlight, blah blah blah. So she was pretty nice about that. But yeah, whenever I would go to her office hours and everything, she told me like her whole like immigrant story and whatnot. And it was definitely like, again, if she can do it, especially, you know, she got her PhD and everything, I can also overcome these other barriers, and I can definitely get this master's done. So I know it's a lot easier said than done, but definitely having faculty that, you know, is representative of you is pretty important. And again, easier said than done, especially in such a small university as CSU.
Thank you, Coral. Anybody else?
Yeah, like, so it seems like everybody's spoken on like the faculty side. Like on the student side, like I think that it would be a really good idea for CSU to make a presence in organizations like NSBP, SACNIS, and all of those places where they have like yearly meetings and everything, where they actually have high school students, undergrads, and graduate students attend and have a booth or something set up showing them that you're interested in having those students of those different like backgrounds come to the school, because it's kind of weird enough that if you just look at the general demographics of Columbus as a whole, that there are not more Black people there, but then at the same time, it makes a lot of sense because I don't know if anybody else grew up in Columbus that's on the panel, but I grew up in Columbus and I went to like Carver High School, and it's a majority Black high school, and the vast majority of people who graduate from the majority Black high schools only really consider going to schools like Albany State, Fort Valley State, like Alabama State. Like if it's not one of those schools, it's not really considered an option. And CSU is basically in everybody's backyard, and very few people consider going to CSU because I guess it's a lot easier. It's easier to find yourself going to a school where more people look like you, right? Like that's part of the thing. That's part of the issue right there. But if there was more of a presence, more people would consider going there that are even from the same city as the school. And with that would come with building some sort of relationship like with the city, more so than just building stuff downtown and making it a cool hangout spot for the current students to do stuff. Like just finding someone have initiatives that way would be a great idea. Would be a great way for them to get more people from Columbus there.
Well, I would like to very much thank all 5 of our panelists and all of our guests who joined us today. These are these 5 students. I've told you guys this. I'll tell you again on recording. I think of all of you and your classmates as kind of our academic kids, academic children, and we're really proud of you. You guys have done some amazing things. You've overcome some some steep hills to climb, and I know you guys are going to go continue to do great things, and obviously make all of us proud, because we kind of live vicariously through you as you go on from our department out into the bigger world. So I want to thank all 5 of y'all very much, and I will be harassing you guys about coming back and showing your faces, even if it's in Zoom or Teams. For our seminar, and again, we want to brag about you as much as we can, along with all of your classmates, about all the great things y'all are doing. So, and I know you guys will stay in touch with us. So, thank you all very much. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us, and hopefully we can do this again at some point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, I guess I'll say thanks too. Thanks.